Hey guys, it's Mike back here with Logical Raptors Fanatic. I want to say a couple things before I get to the video. I want to thank all the people that have shown support, comments, likes, all my guys in different chats and stuff. I know I'm kind of in everything, kind of always learning and growing in different areas all at the same time. So I know it's kind of a mix and different collection of people, but it's really great to see the support, everyone showing out. I want to thank Grubstown. I just found his channel, a lot of great content, similar style that I want to get into, like deeper concept stuff, not just the news. I want to try to make my videos more timeless and can be like watched at any point and the information still be great. So I want to get into Chris today and kind of talk about, I think, a great quote that was said by Nick Nurse that Chris Boucher continues to climb the rungs of the NBA ladder. And I want to kind of give more context to why he climbed those ladders or climbed those rungs, and also give the context of what those rungs were so we can kind of dissect a little bit more of how the Raptors kind of develop different guys. I think his story is more unique than the other guys, so it's going to be really interesting. And I just want to say enjoy. So we got Chris Boucher early years, and I want to talk about something, a concept that I want to kind of lay down, the glass as the metaphorical glass, I think, of the mind and how a mind develops through the years and what skills it learns. I think him and knowing his story, being kind of like couch surfing and being homeless, kind of working at St. Hubert's, I think it really changed who he was. I think he had to become more resourceful and more like able to learn from mistakes quicker because I think his mistakes, when made, were a little bit more damaging to his self-being. So it's it's like you learn really quickly or you don't really make it or you tend to keep having hardships. And I think it's really interesting how it's built him into this kind of like fighter, has pretty much never been given anything really in his life. He's had a couple hard breaks and stuff, and then we're going to talk about them. But it's really interesting how he can kind of take a punch per se and get back up and just get stronger from it. I think that's the type of mentality. Like your basketball IQ is another thing altogether. But and I'm gonna get into it with some of the other recipes slash molds that the other players kind of grew up in, and the Raptors have kind of developed these certain ways of developing guys, and I want to kind of talk about the trends in the different things, but I want to also spotlight each guy too. So I think it's really important to start it off with his mentality and understand who he is, because I think his makeup is really like a guy that understands the gravity of moments and has no problem giving everything he can because he understands that opportunities are limited to people sometimes and you have to take the opportunity you're given. And I think this is a story about a guy that hasn't been given much. Like, obviously, we can tell when we were talking in the Raptors effect video, the Carter effect explained, I talked about size and character. So I think it's really important that he has the character, but it's a different type of character, not like the basketball character, like work habits and stuff. I think that came later, but initially I think he had the strong character of being a battler, never give up. Like you can knock this guy down a million times and he's never stopping. He's never going to give up. He's never going to die. And then the second point of size, and I think that's where he was given more opportunity later in his career because I think the investment that was given towards him isn't usually done for older players that are discovered at 19, as you can see in the first piece here. But he had such a unique size and speed, because I think earlier on he said in life he used to play soccer and hockey and then probably hit a growth spurt and was like, whoa, this the game's changed for me. But I think he worked on those foot skills and those speed skills and had that. So it's really interesting. He's a uniquely sized guy. So his vertical height at that speed makes him an interesting prospect and a matchup nightmare for normal power forwards, because he's kind of got the height of a center, the body of a power forward, but speed of a small forward, and can kind of like guard the slower guys up, but not body them. So it's really interesting how he has the character part and then the size part. And I think we're going to go through now the journey of what happened here. And this is a great point to kind of tie to that Raptors effect video also. The spark, the love. We talked about friends because I think at that time in Chris's life he couldn't really watch a lot of probably Raptors games constantly because he was always working or doing whatever, you know what I mean? Like he was always trying to survive. So I think it was more the people in his circle, some of the friends were talking about like a tournament that you could get maybe some free stuff at. So obviously his resourcefulness and his maybe love to want to go and chill with his friends and be included and you know what I mean, be there. And he ended up playing in the tournament and actually did really well, like really well. And I think when you're in that kind of mode of trying to survive, you learn how to read people really well. And I think at that tournament, his mentor that's been with him now for since he started pretty much discovered him and then has been with him up until now, Ibrahim, which he talks about quite a bit, was a solid guy enough that could help him build those other attributes, the basketball character. And I think he's really been instrumental in his development going forward. Like, it's been really interesting how Ibrahim has kind of helped speed up his development because someone starting to play organized basketball at 19 doesn't really have a great chance to make it to the league. Like, statistically, it's rare. So I think it's really interesting how Ibrahim was able to help him and be that support. Because I think it's really important for players to have a certain type of support around them to really succeed and be able to like not have so many ups and downs and just be really grounded and really focused on what you need to be doing, because I think it takes focus and character to come in this late and really like triumph in a way that he has. And I think this year was really interesting. I don't want to focus too much on the numbers because I know competition and all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to kind of go through each rung. So the first rung was getting discovered, obviously. So then he played that season at an AAU program where Ibrahim was a coach there, Alma Academy. And he played all right and got some interest, but then had to go to junior college route, which is where D1, 2, or 3 schools aren't really interested in you, and you kind of have to show more in that department. I'm guessing schooling was also a bit of an issue too, so he probably had to get his grades up. But I'm not going to go too much into that part, right? It's more the journey, and I think JUCO is a really interesting route for some players. It has produced pros through that route, but it's a harder route, I think. And I think it's really interesting. 2 years in kind of like a junior college setting is really interesting. Like, so 19 at that age, so he would be 22 already, when most people are getting drafted, and he's coming out of his second year of junior college. And I think that takes a strong mindset because I'm sure at every point people are telling, "What are you doing here? Like you're too old, man. Like what do you should be focusing on something else." But I think at each rung, he's shown an ability to succeed using his size and his willpower and his battling. And it's really interesting. He became the player of the year, which obviously interested a D1 school, I think. And that was the last year he had eligibility to transfer to a D1, so it's really interesting. And then he was there for 2 years, so a full four full year college like career after spending a year in AAU after getting discovered at 19. So like it's really interesting how he's developed. Like it's not the natural way things are normally done, but I think it's really interesting what he did at University of Oregon. I don't want to focus on the stats too much again. Competition, right? I think they're less telling. It's just about what he was able to accomplish and the more notable things, I think. So in the 2015 season, he played pretty well for Oregon, and actually they lost in the Elite Eight, which is really decent and really good. And then he also got the single season block record for Oregon at 110 blocks, which is obviously great. So I think it showed promise right off the first season, and I think obviously they were really excited to have him back. And then during the season, he really showed a lot more, I think, being named Pac-12 defensive team. Like a guy that just started playing basketball like a couple years pretty much ago is now like the Pac-12 defensive team. It's he's really climbed and battled, I think, and it shows each level, man. This guy just continues to just put his all into everything. And it's really refreshing to see a guy that really wants it and really wants to battle. But obviously, he got hit with a punch right here where a player fell on him and he tore his ACL. So it wasn't like a wear and tear because he hasn't been doing hard sports all the time he's grown up. So his body's actually fairly like stable, and he actually did play 80 games last season for us, which is really interesting stat, I guess. He played the most games, 80 games. That's a lot of games. 80 games. That's why I think his durability is kind of shown a little bit through. He hasn't been worn and torn as much as the other guys, but this was a kind of freak accident, which obviously set him back. I think this was a big setback in his journey because if you think about it, this was before the tournament, NCAA March Madness tournament. And we don't know, like after another year being Pac-12 defensive team, we have no clue what a tournament run and him being like the anchor would have done for his career going forward. And I think it would have changed a certain aspect of his road. Obviously, he's a guy that will never give up no matter how hard you knock him down, he's going to come back. But I think this is really interesting to kind of look back at because I think his journey could have been really different if this didn't actually happen and maybe they got to the final four or something like that. That could have been a really interesting aspect to his whole career and his timeline and his development cycle. He's still the same player, I think, ultimately, but another run in the final four probably upgrade his skills a little bit more because it's about playing those meaningful minutes and kind of learning through mistakes. And I think the Raptors are really key on that. Learn through mistakes. If you're not learning from mistakes, then I think that's when they start to kind of hesitate on putting that full effort and full minutes into you. Because if you see Precious this year, he kind of started off all wonky. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, like get this guy off the court. What did we do?" But it showed Precious is able to learn from mistakes really well and kind of come back and not make that same mistake. And I think Boucher sort of shows that a bit. It takes a little bit more time with him, but he does show those improvements, and I think that's why the Raptors have kind of held on to him and kept him through these couple years. But I want to now go into, so here we got G League Chris Boucher, which I think is an interesting point in his career because I think he really broke out. But we'll talk about it kind of. We'll go through a bunch of different things in this time part of the timeline. So getting undrafted at age 25 is, so it took him pretty much 6 years to get to the league, and he's still seen as a young well, not young, but a raw prospect with upside because of his size and his speed, what we talked about earlier. And so I think Golden State signed him to a two-way, and we can see kind of what he did that year. So he played 20 games for the G League team, um, the Golden State's G League team, and started 8 of them. Played about 22 minutes, got about 10 shots, shot under 50%, shot some threes, didn't hit many, was okay on twos, free throws, not too well, rebounds a lot, and blocks a lot, obviously. And then for 11 points, that's not bad. It showed something, but I'm that year for the big Golden State team, he played one game, 1 minute. I'm not even gonna go into that. So I think it's understood they kind of waived him. They didn't see him being able to climb the ladders quick enough for them. But the Raptors saw potential and they understood what a guy from Canada and that kind of motor and that kind of drive. And I think they've been watching Chris for a bit. They're kind of, you need to know your own backyard. So they need to have all these guys kind of scouted and kind of know who's coming up through the Canadian ranks. Because I think that Canadian touchstone part is really important. And I think Chris has been that for a bit for us. And it's really been really great, I think, for like the country of Canada and stuff. It's really interesting. But so the Raptors signed him to a two-way, and I think that's the season he really broke out because I think he really got motivated by Masai and saw what Masai wanted for him. And he thought, hey, I can do this. I can put the effort in. I can work. I can do everything that they want me to do, and kind of give it my all every day. And it shows. He won the G League MVP and the Defensive Player of the Year that year, which is really interesting. If we look at his stats, he played 28 games, started all the games, played 34 minutes, got 19 shots, so pretty much 10 more shots that he got in Golden State. So it obviously shows a more investment and a bigger role, a bigger chance, a bigger opportunity to actually show what he can do. And I think it shows through the numbers he actually came up with here. That's not bad total. Shooting 7 threes a game, but hitting 32%, not bad. Like for a guy that pretty much started playing the game 7 years ago, starting to really come on now here. And it shows 7.5. That's not bad for 2 pointers, 61%. Okay. His free throws came up. It looks like he's been working on his game. Like that's what they want to see. They want to see the increases, and they want to see tangible increases in each aspect of the game. So he got more minutes. I want to see the improvement, right? So total rebounds. Look at this. Monster at rebounds, man. 11.4 total rebounds. Ridiculous. 1.3 steals and a monster. A monster. 4.1 blocks. Wow. Wow. And hitting scoring at a clip of 27.2. No wonder he won both G League and MVP, or Defensive Player of the Year, and the MVP, man. Wow. That's an incredible stat line. Incredible stat line. And I think it showed like they brought him up for a bunch of games that year. I think this is the next part I want to talk about, because obviously he played in the playoffs for that season, and I think it's really interesting that he had great playoff numbers. I think his three ball went down a little bit, his field goal percentage went down, but it looks like it's stable. Hit all his clutch free throws. His rebounds were up still. 6 blocks. Wow. Wow. See, this is what they saw. They saw like a blocking machine because of his speed and his vertical height. He could get closer, block threes. It's the gifts he's been given, but it's about getting his IQ and his basketball knowledge up higher and faster as possible. But he's shown a real great like track record in the G League, and shows that he's way better than the G League. So I think that year they wanted him to come on the run in 2019 to be like, not to play, but to see how everything is, see the environment, see the coaching style, the adjustments, the game plans, like get ingrained with the way we run a playoff program, and kind of let him start sponging off Serge Ibaka, which was a great power forward for years and has tons of knowledge at that position, and Marc Gasol, a great center that has great defensive knowledge and ability, high IQ defender at that position. I think you want him to start sponging things up quickly, as as quick as possible, right? And I think both those guys, Ibaka and Gasol, were great at trying to like help him learn. And it obviously shows with his development. I think he came in more garbage time, so I don't think I want to look at too much of these stats. I don't think they're that important, because I think this season was more important, that he was with us with the ride. He showed that he can be a real player in this league. And I think it's interesting. I'm going to go over this number over here. This is my championship number. He's got two. So he was actually with the team that year, but because of the two-way, they couldn't actually bring him to the playoffs. So uh, he technically got a ring for being on, I guess. I don't know, but we'll call it one, I guess. And then obviously he's with us with our run, and this is an interesting thing I popped up. Like in 2019, the first Canadian to win, that's supposed to be win, but winning an NBA championship on a Canadian team, which is going to be a trivia question one day if we win a bunch of these, and we're going to have Canadian players on the team. So I see like a great future for us in that regard. But he's going to be the first of many, hopefully, right? That's the direction and kind of what I wanted to lay out in the Raptors effect, the Carter effect explained. So it's really interesting, this. And now we're gonna move on to the next. Now we got here prime Chris Boucher, which I think it's just because of his age years. Like you can see that he's in his prime right now, kind of. But it's a different sort of prime. Like I think he's gonna still have good years on the other side of 30, but because of his wear and tear, his body hasn't been torn up through tons of years of AAU and stuff. So I think his longevity will still continue to kind of roll out. Okay, so as we can see, converted the two-way about the time before the championship run, so he could be on the roster for the playoffs in case we did need him. He was still a great piece, and we wanted him there with us. But On the run it back season, I think he was more of a deep bench role, started to get him adjusted to game speed. He was in 20 or 62 games, played 13 minutes, didn't really get a lot of shots, hit a three or so, like what Nick Nurse used to say. Oh, he'd come in and block a shot, hit a three, and I think that's interesting because like with no minutes, pretty much, he still gets a block, half a steal, a bunch of rebounds, hits his free throws, does well from the two, even though being undersized. And he did okay from the three, I guess, that year, 6 points. So if I think that's what really excited Raptors players or Raptors fans and the coaches and stuff. If you actually scale up his per 36 numbers on this, it really looks impressive. And I think that's always been kind of what they saw since he was putting up a bunch of points in the G League, that maybe he could be like a secondary poor man Siakam with a different defensive profile, a little bit different, but Siakam's a bit better, obviously. But kind of like have him as a bench role 6 man kind of guy always. But I think they were trying him at center too because that's where he won his G League MVP. I think like playing that center role, blocking. He's a mismatch for all centers, but I think the heaviness plays a factor through the season, and you need to kind of shore up that position. You can't have him playing tons of minutes exclusively at center against bigger bodies, and I think that's where Ken Burge comes in and helps Chris like take off some of the heavy wear and tear that he can take and helps Precious, which helps Kololo, like everyone that we're kind of have in that center position where we play this kind of like tandem rim protection. Well, from Raptors Report, Samson Folk, he's great. If you got to subscribe and check him out, but he calls it democratic rim protection. And I think in that democratic system, Chris Boucher is like the leader, like the president in that democratic situation, a guy kind of really being there, but then we're using Precious's weight to hold back the bigger guys. So it's a really great tandem, and it's really interesting how they kind of mix defensively. But I think going into Tampa, we had less players. Obviously, we lost Ibaka, we lost Gasol, and we picked up Baines and Alex Lynn. So that center position was really kind of hurting at that point. So you can see he got tons of minutes at center. But I think it's really interesting. We learned that season he couldn't play full-time center. I think his defense wasn't the same. Like we gave him twice as much minutes, and you can see certain things increase with time and showing that dedication. And his three ball came up that year. That's when he was really hitting the lights out on that three. He pretty much got it to him, and you thought it was going in. His crazy catapult shot. I think he that's like a shot like because he wasn't trained like throughout his younger years, so he's kind of just made do with what's felt right, and they've kind of not wanted to tinker with that because he's shown results to be able to hit it somewhat. And I think that's just why his shot's the way it is, even though it looks crazy. The trebuchet. But okay, there's yeah. See, you can see 2 pointers, about the same kind of doubled up. You can see that this is what they're looking for. When we scale up your minutes, you need to show the same results and somewhat better because you're getting more rhythm, more opportunities, a better, bigger role. And they want to see somewhat improvements. Hits okay from free throws, his rebounds up, his assists up, his steals less up because his blocks are more up, right? but less turnovers. I don't think he was handling the ball much, so I don't think turnovers kind of plays into his stats too much. But we also need to look at the the fouls. He had trouble defending the center position without fouling, and that really created these early, early in the penalty, like in the penalty in like the first couple minutes, kind of like quarters, and it just it wasn't working in Tampa, and I think they realized it. The metrics bared out that he fouls too much to be effective at that position because of his size. He needs to contain a bigger, larger center. But I think his offense is what we were looking at to kind of translate to that power forward position. So we're gonna move him down defensively, but still kind of have a similar role where he blocks shots, blocks threes, kind of like mans the paint a little bit. But at the same time, we're kind of using him as more of offensive cog because now that spacing he's shown ability to space, we can move another center in there and not see a decrease in spacing from two inefficient 3-point shooters on the floor at the same time, creating uh, a scenario where two people can sag off and kind of give extra help a lot more and recover easily and not worry about that. So it's really interesting this season, the season that just happened where he played 80 games, like I said earlier, really great durability kind of sign. Started 9. I think that was more the COVID and kind of early in the season when Pascal was out and then OG kind of got hurt. But he was given a decent amount of minutes, not as much as in the Tampa season, because I think we brought in Precious and he was getting some of those minutes that usually Boucher was in that role before. His shots went down a bit. Yeah, you could see. I think early in the season, I think these stats are kind of skewed for this year because really early on, I think he was pushing it too hard. He was trying too hard. He was chucking up way too many threes, and I think his three ball kind of fell off. He broke his finger in training camp, and I think that threw off like his rhythm, like the whole season. Like he's a guy that needs his rhythm and I think that's why you haven't seen him at Team Canada. He's really focused on trying to climb that ladder, like really dedicate himself to what he's trying to do for the Raptors right now and his platform and kind of inspiring everyone. I think that's a part he wants to maybe do, but at the same time, I think he's really focused on what he needs to do to kind of be in the NBA first and then Team Canada kind of second. It's a priority thing, and I think that's the the way he's kind of been able to excel climbing these rungs is through focus and hard work and character. Obviously, he's a battler, a gamer. He wants to be in the mix. He'll get in dirty spots and do whatever it takes to win because he understands the gravity of his opportunities. Because early in life, he hasn't had many opportunities and kind of has had sore breaks at certain points. So it's really interesting. So about after that Cleveland game, he said in his podcast pretty much, if you haven't checked them out, you should. Chris seems like a really cool, real guy. I think he realizes what's important in life and doesn't want to fake the funk and rather just be real because he likes when people are real to him because he can see that in other people when they're being fake and he's kind of like a truth detector in a sense like that. I think because of his time on the streets and whatnot and becoming street smart. That's where the glass was filling. So he's good with people, but his basketball IQ and his sporting knowledge kind of didn't increase at that time. So now he's trying to catch up. And I think it's really interesting how he's a success story, a guy that started 19 years old, started playing basketball. Now at the age of 29, his a decent, valuable, winning basketball player that has made decent money. We'll go over here. Obviously, 2022, we re we re-signed him for that Tampa Bay season. Gave him like six because he did show promise. Those per 36 numbers showed that he was worth something, and I think other teams were eyeing that. So we did have to make that number competitive. And people maybe thought it was too much at that time, but hey, it obviously looked like a great contract. And I think his role, see, yeah, scoring bench role in that Tampa Bay season where he did really well. He kind of broke out, but he didn't show an ability to defend that center position. So we moved him to the scoring bench role power forward position in this year. And it kind of didn't work out at the beginning of the year when he was trying to focus more on shooting and trying to get his scoring numbers up because that's what the trend was showing that he should be doing. But I think ultimately, when Scotty came in, it showed a different direction. And he could have maybe still been like a scoring bench piece, not the most effective one, but still a piece like that on any other team. But I think his dedication and want to be on this team really made him take a look at his game and really look at himself and what he wanted for the rest of his career. And I think he went through a mini fire of his, like we talk about the fire that Pascal went through in my extension series. I know the audio quality is sus, but I think the information's still good. But anyways, he there's an interesting aspect to all of this, I think, when we need to tie like everything together with how the Raptors develop people and what they see. Like the league might not see everything that he can offer, but what the Raptors need, he sees. Chris Boucher sees. It's funny he's looking right at looking at everyone like I'm Boucher, headband Boucher. Yeah. I love that energy by the way, Boucher. You're love that headband Boucher. But so like these stats this year, it looks funny after he signed this contract and you look back and when they roll up the stats, they don't really seem a lot because I think he did a really role change and then he started gaining steam in that role and really coming on. And we started really winning games and he became an integral piece to kind of the next stage of this team. And he showed that ability to adapt, to listen, to put that effort. Effort's never a question with Chris, I think. It's always about aiming that effort in the right direction. Because if you tell him to shoot, he's going to shoot. Tell him to do this, he's going to do that, right? I think he wants to be here so much and his dedication to the game and the love of the Raptors and the sport and who he is as a person, like a battler, a guy that's never going to give up. He's going to continue to grow. So I think looking at this number, and this is kind of the end role he had. And in the playoffs, he showed an ability to really play this role and add a couple dimensions. That one play where he kind of takes it off the dribble. The guy comes up on him because he's on the 3 point line, and he comes out and he kind of takes it on the dribble and lays it off the glass like really beautifully, like Pascal esque. I think he continues to work on aspects, and I think hustle bench roll can still be a glue guy that can show talent in different skills. This isn't just like a non-skilled guy here. This guy is a matchup nightmare, and the more he learns the game, the more dangerous he's gonna get. I think Van Vliet said the quote, and Chris is like pretty much like 99% effort and like 1% knowledge. And if he kind of put it together, he'd be a nasty monster of a player. And I think the Raptors have always kind of seen that for him. It might not always hit the full effect, but I think he's continuing in that direction. That's what matters. Showing growth and then showing an ability to accept criticism and continue to still be a productive piece on this team. And I think Nick Nurse is really knows who Chris is, and I think kind of pushes him in the right ways a lot. So it's really interesting. But let's talk about the contract, I guess, where it looks like a big number, right? Wow, 30, but the first year is actually like the 13 million, then 12 million, and then 10 million. So it's backloaded. We obviously looked at it in my extension series finale when we went over everyone's contracts and stuff. And I think I just want to keep this video not on his future role and just more of the rungs he's climbed already, because I think for Chris, he has so many opportunities to kind of be something so different each year and throughout each game that it's hard to even kind of pinpoint what kind of player he is now. He's just like kind of like that great glue guy. If you need a charge, he's going to get it for you. You need a block or something, he's going to go in there. You need whatever, a bucket. You can need a good like back screen. You need like whatever, he's going to provide it, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to stay here. And I think that's what this number says from Masai. It says you've done pretty much everything we've asked of you. You've continued to develop and show the results that we've been looking for. I know that it didn't go the way that we wanted it to necessarily from those per 36 numbers, but I think you still have a role and you're still part of this team. And I think it's really interesting how Bobby Webster's said a couple times that Chris Boucher is part of that core. And I think that's what they meant, like growing together. Like these years, he's growing with Pascal, growing with Van Vliet, growing with OG. They're all playing together and they're kind of learning everything together. And I think he's part of that core, but also kind of like the way it's funny how Joel Joel Embiid asked the Sixers for like more toughness, like they needed tougher players. This is tough right here. This man is as tough as they get. He is a fighter. And I think that's what we need going into this new phase of competition. I think he's found a role. I think as long as he performs in that role, which I'm not too concerned about him. I think we have other pieces developing, but he's always kind of developing because he's getting more knowledgeable. He's going to make less mistakes, make better plays. So he's going to continue to develop. And I think this is a really interesting recipe where they had him kind of deep benched, kind of 2 years, kind of slash 1 year in the G League, and it's not like the regular cycle where they kind of give the rookie some burn and then they put him in the G League kind of right away to kind of let him build those skills up. Like let him get a frame of reference and what he needs to work on, then put him in the G League to work on it is usually kind of some of the tactics they use with the higher picks. But I think as a more raw long-term project, this is definitely a success story and an interesting recipe because they took a guy that wasn't high IQ, high knowledge, but had great motor and kind of a great like skill set and kind of size and kind of made him into a great player. And I think when Windhorse called Chris Boucher a revelation in that Tampa season, they're talking about how you can use the G League and how you can use your other positions maybe to develop different guys to come up to be a real piece in the future. Because when he did sign this 3 year, 35 million, there were a bunch of teams that were interested in him. They were willing to give that MLE. So we had to kind of go a little bit over the MLE. But we had his bird rights, so we could do it. We were fine. So it's really interesting his whole journey and all the rungs he's climbed, man. Like literally every year is a new rung, a new test, a new like a new challenge, and it's really interesting how he's really shown the ability to really grow in the system, and I think this is ultimately what everyone is looking for in the rest of the guys, kind of the deep bench positions, the guys that we kind of had for a couple years. Malachi, I think they've put him in this kind of frame where they've kind of it's more of a skill hold back and not necessarily a knowledge hold back. So he has the right character and understands the knowledge, but now we need to kind of build up his defensive skills a little bit more and build on the consistency of shooting and kind of all that. And I think Fred's obviously helping him with that. But it's really interesting. I want to go into maybe at a later time about what kind of mentorship and knowledge per se, like quantify it and actually give it a little bit more context. And I'll go into that later, but I think for now we'll end it off here. Some housekeeping, I guess. I want to thank everyone that's commented, subbed, liked, all my friends from different communities and stuff. I know it's a different crazy blend. I want to no, yeah, so I've re-listened to it a bit. I butchered a couple of dates and names. Sorry, Raptors Republic. I love you guys. I have the bell clicked. If you don't have them belled, you should bell them because they come out with some great information all the time. Check out their website. They got a lot of deep Raptor stuff. Um, I just want to thank everybody that's in this Raptors community that kind of makes you want to be involved and kind of do more within the community. That's really great energy, great positive energy about our team. And I just want to thank everyone for their time. I'm thinking of making like developing Raptors developing value a kind of hallmark series of mine. With the extension series, I'll probably do that every summer or so. So I don't know. We'll see how this kind of evolves over the year. I don't know what videos I want to kind of plan during the season yet, but I do have ideas for more of the timeless videos like Raptors developing value or talking about like the Raptors effect and quantifying different things and focusing on growth trends and salary and like rule technicalities and stuff like that. And I think if you really enjoy it, come along with the journey. Obviously, we're scaling up in production, trying to learn from the mistakes and trying to not make them again like Chris Boucher. And we're going to continue this great energy. And just want to thank everyone for listening. Peace out.